The Charlotte Hornets play their first summer league game. What did we see from Brandon Miller? And is PJ Washington telling us where he's going in free agency? That's all today on Locked On Hornets.
You're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free. We are available anywhere you get your pods. That does include YouTube. That's Doug Branson. Catch him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday, Wes and Walker, from 12 to 3 p.m. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. As we often have to start the show, we got to go see why Doug is smiling and or laughing and or expressing, because this is what we do here. There is always something via YouTube Doug is doing to catch my attention before we can really dive into the show. Doug, what's going on?
Well, this is more of a visual thing, so I apologize to the listeners, but your camera shot was once again wonky. I don't know why, but you suddenly grew taller over the weekend. You were a little too tall in the shot. I had to fix it. I get back to the studio. Everything's broken. But look, we fixed it. Everything's fine. We can move on. We can talk about Summer League. Speaking of things that are broken, Summer League.
Woo! It was amazing. I tweeted this out, but it was like they were jumping into Summer League like Rick Ross buckled on that second diving board attempt. It was so atrocious right from the get-go. I forget the score at the end of the first. I think it was like 28-9 at the end of the first, and they had 4 points for a large part of that. It was brutal, but really we're focusing on individual players here, right? Yes, the Hornets were bad, but we are looking for good individual performances from Bryce McGowens, from James Bouknight, an important center, or important summer. Kai Jones is the important center and has the important summer. But Brandon Miller is the guy that we're all paying attention to, that second overall pick. He finished with 18 points. He was 5 of 11 from the field, 3 of 7 from beyond the arc, and really it was a fourth quarter that helped him out with those stats. I believe 12 points in the fourth quarter, Doug. So there's the box score. What can you tell us from watching the film?
Well, look, I mean, if you locked me in a closet through the entire draft period and then let me out, I don't know why you did that. But if you did that and then you told me, look,
you needed it. You were ready for the draft period to be done. What do you mean? What you needed? You needed to be in a straitjacket.
You're right. I would have been a lot happier as an individual. My soul would have been a lot healthier if you had done that. But say you had let me out and you said, look, the Hornets drafted someone. And I said, And you said they just scored, they had their first Summer League game. They scored 18 points. They had 5 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and a block. And how do you feel about that? I'd say I feel great. And you say, well, he had 6 turnovers and 7 personal fouls. And I would have said, well, that's Summer League. So, just blind test. I'm going to say I like that performance. And yes, a lot of that came in the fourth quarter, and that's okay. Summer is for feelings. Preseason is for reason. Summer is also for mistakes. You want guys making mistakes in Summer League. You want guys testing their limitations. You want guys finding out. You don't want them finding this out in game number 1 of the regular season. You want them finding out now, that thing I could do in college where I could be really aggressive on defense at the perimeter and think that I could hang with a guy. Champagny taught him pretty quickly. You reach, I teach. That's a limit. He's not going to be able to do some of the same things he did in college on the defensive end or on the offensive end. So I'm happy that, he struggled there at the beginning. You want him struggling now.
Yeah, the first quarter was not kind to anybody. The Charlotte Hornets in their entirety, every one of them, they were really bad. And I didn't think Brandon Miller was any different. I thought the first quarter was really bad. I even thought the second quarter was a lot better than the first. No, he didn't have majority of his points, but I did think Brandon Miller started to settle in a little bit more once the game got going. And then the fourth quarter happened and the shot making actually occurred for Brandon, right? So that's where he starts to hit the threes. That's where he got hot from deep. He had the drive with the really tough finish. His defender falls down. He's still in traffic, and then he shoots it falling down to the ground and is able to hit what is a tough drive. So that was nice to see. Even in the first half, his first bucket, I believe that came on a left-handed layup. I thought there was some patience shown in that pick and roll, which is something people lauded him for at Alabama. There is a patience, right? There is a decent stationary handle there from Brandon Miller where you feel good about him making the right decision in those scenarios, and he did there. The seas parted for him on the left side, and he was able to take it all the way to the cup. So I think those were a couple of the good things that we saw from Brandon.
Well, is it fair to say, Walker, that I think we saw all of the good things from Brandon Miller that we were pretty sure we would see early on? So we saw the shooting stroke. It came on late, but we saw it, and it was pretty. Like the shot, it looks good. It's a little low, but the quick release is amazing.
But spot ups are fine.
Right. Spot ups are fine. He looked good there. And we saw him use his length offensively on that left-handed layup. We saw, but I think it's also fair to say we also saw some of the limitations that we were pretty sure that we were going to see in terms of his handle. They were, the Spurs played good team defense and put a couple of guys on him when he tried to drive, and he coughed the basketball up. So we saw some of that. Defensively, he had to play the 4 for most of this game. And that's the weird thing about Summer League, right? The lineup constructions are going to be way different for certain players. They're going to have to play out of position. Unfortunately, he's playing for the Charlotte Hornets. And in Summer League, for some reason, they've decided for the past couple of seasons not to bring a, NBA G League level point guard to the festivities, or at least play them significant minutes. And so, you're not getting, I think, an experience that's going to be reflective of what he's going to go through in the first part of his actual NBA career. So I think we can pile all those caveats on top. We can hope for improvements in the upcoming games. And I think what I want to see, Walker, is him, as he goes through the Summer League process, start to play within his strengths and maybe, keep testing those limitations every once in a while,
Sure.
but maybe a little less than he did in this first game.
So here's the good that I saw from Brandon Miller. The chase down block was excellent. I thought that was a great play. Effort was all there from Brandon. There's no way that you're questioning his effort out there. I thought there were some right spots on defense for him. I thought he was in the right spot in a good bit of defensive situations. You saw flashes on that end. He has potential to be a real off-ball hero. And even his rookie season, that might be hard because you are asking him to shoot from a lot deeper this year, being in the NBA. And so that's one thing. Shooting can come and go too, right? Even on season-long campaigns. But I think the off-ball hero capability, that's what you really are going to see him make an impact this year. There was the tough driving shot I mentioned to the paint in the fourth quarter. Here's where I thought he struggled. I thought he really struggled to get by guys without a screen. If there wasn't a screen set for Brandon, then it wasn't going to happen. And there was even a closeout where there was somebody closing out on Brandon. He tries to go to the left. He was on the wing, and the perimeter defender, I forget who it was, but he recovers easily and then actually strips Brandon Miller on that play. That might have come in like the third or the second. So I think Brandon Miller is really struggling to get by guys, very much so, without screens. I think his handles are high. The handles seem to be one of the more polarizing evaluation skill sets for him. Some people really like it. Some people are pretty concerned. I think in traffic, lack of physicality, lack of blow-by speed, and his handles being high, I think that led to some of the turnovers that you saw from Brandon Miller in this game. There was the bad touch pass to Kai, and there was a bad closeout, and he lost a shooter in the corner on a few defensive possessions as well. Defensively, it's going to be hit or miss, whatever, right? He'll figure that out. But offensively, the things that you feel good about going forward, the off-ball role, the things that you think are going to be a little bit of a struggle, it's with the basketball in his hands, getting by defenders. That doesn't seem like that'll be a part of his rookie season.
But that's what I'm saying, right? None of that is surprising. That was all in the evaluations. That's what, even the people that were high on Brandon Miller were telling us, there are going to be things he's going to have to work through, early in his career. And all of those things that you mentioned were that. But the defensive effort is there. He's just learning, like most every other college prospect, that the way that your mid-level college player plays offense is just different than even your lower level NBA players, which is who his matchup was. I mean, Justin Champagnie, just got signed to the contract for San Antonio. That's your fringe level NBA offensive player, and the fringe level NBA offensive player is really, really good. And you're going to be defending that guy and several levels above that guy night in and night out. And that's the adjustment that guys have to make defensively. But I'm confident, he can make that adjustment. But yeah, I just wasn't surprised by anything that I saw. And it's not often that a rookie, despite, even if they're drafted top 3, it's not often that a rookie comes in and just wholly dominates Summer League. And what I liked from Brandon Miller is that he did not have a nightmare game. He did not let the first half struggles get into his head. He came out in that second half, remained active until the shots started falling. And that first 3 was a deep NBA 3. That was cool to see because we had seen him hit deep college threes and we were like, okay, that's going to translate to the NBA. That first 3 was a deep NBA 3, like a not quite a LaMelo deep 3, but pretty close. So yeah, the shooting is there. You got to be super excited about that.
Yeah, he did play 33 minutes too. They let him play, man. Played the most minutes of any player on this roster. And there were some different looks. You're right, Champagnie. That's a fringe NBA player, which means you're a good G League guy, right? I think there were some moments where you saw Javonte McCoy. There were some other defensive assignments. City Sissoko might have been on him a little bit too, rookie. Scoot Henderson, teammate from G League Ignite. So we'll see what happens in the second game with Brandon Miller and Nick Smith Jr. Maybe we can get into some of that in the last segment, talk a little bit more about the Summer League game with what Bryce McGowan's did, what Nick Smith Jr. did. We did get to see Amari Bailey have a couple of dunks in a row. That was fun. So that's all still to come. But specifically, what is coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast?
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
PJ Washington is changing his bio on Twitter. And when he does that, when the players do that, you start to raise an eyebrow. What's happening? Is he unfollowing the Hornets? Yeah, it looks like he might be leaving. We'll tell you where in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's a fantasy sports app or website where you can pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available, and they offer projections on really any sport you watch. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. You have safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states and even Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com. Sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, they give you $100. If you deposit $50, they give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. We'll talk about PJ Washington coming up next. Doug, I don't know if you've seen PJ's Twitter bio, but he changed it. And this time it just has his little mark where he is, right? Marking his location. And it says Dallas, Texas. And I saw Charlotte Sports Despair. Our guy put out on Twitter, he was doing some sleuth work. And it doesn't seem like PJ is following the Charlotte Hornets anymore.
Oh, boy.
PJ to Dallas, question mark. That is the question surrounding us right now. We have not seen any deal done between the Hornets and PJ. The longer this went on, I guess the worse you felt about it, because that means the more PJ is looking for an offer sheet somewhere. I guess there could be a sign and trade a part of this. I don't know Dallas's cap situation, but we know Houston, San Antonio, a couple of other Texas teams were the teams to look for regarding cap space to absorb a PJ Washington contract. So maybe this is a sign and trade deal. I don't know, Doug. What do you make of this?
I'm just looking up like his hometown. Is he from Dallas? Just trying to find any clues here. It says he was born in Louisville. But maybe just because you're born somewhere doesn't mean that's your hometown. Maybe he moved to Dallas. I'm just looking for any reason that this isn't what it seems like it is, which is that the Hornets are not only playing hardball with Miles Bridges, which resulted in him signing the qualifying offer, but maybe they're playing hardball.
He did go to Lone Star High School in Frisco, Texas.
Okay.
He did do that.
Okay.
I
mean,
Doug,
Texas is a big state.
Did you just
I'm not
save
sure.
Me? Did you just save me?
Frisco,
okay.
Texas. How far is that from Dallas? We have to see. Because Texas is a big state. Just because you're from Frisco doesn't mean you're from Dallas. So
I'm putting in GPS.
Okay, thank you. But are they playing hardball with PJ Washington as well? And that would not be surprising to me for 2 reasons. One, we know that the reason PJ Washington is not already under an extension is because it was reportedly because PJ wanted an amount that the Hornets were uncomfortable doing an early extension on, and wanted to see how PJ played out that final season. PJ played really well in that season and was asked to do a lot more than probably anyone expected PJ Washington to have to do, and did it well. And so, it looked like the Hornets were going to have to pay up, but maybe they don't want to pay up because the second reason is that this is a franchise that is playing with OPM, other people's money, and maybe that other set of owners doesn't want to overpay for PJ Washington. That's been the line on the Charlotte Hornets for a long time, that these middling franchises have to overpay to keep their own talent. It's what I assumed they were going to do because they've kind of been telegraphing that they wanted to make the priority re-signing Miles long-term, re-signing PJ long-term. It's the whole excuse for why they're not active in free agency.
That's
if
right.
they fail to do this, Walker,
that's right.
It would be stunning. It would be stunning.
That's right. By the way, Frisco, 28 minutes away from Dallas. I mean, look, man.
That's a hop, skip, and a jump.
That's at least that's a stone's throw away. Whatever phrase you want to roll with, it's not that far at all. Maybe honestly, it might change something. I don't know, but maybe you're just looking into it. Yeah. The fact is, he still is not signed to any team. There still is not a reported offer sheet extended PJ Washington's way. You know me. I mean, look, I've been a champion. I have been the driving the scoot wagon, right? We were doing that during the draft. I've been driving the PJ wagon for quite some time. It doesn't have the same ring to it, but I've been driving it nonetheless. I think PJ is very valuable in today's NBA to be a stretch power forward that has spent time guarding the best point guards in the league and has spent time having to guard the best centers in the league, and in a role that suits him best and honestly suits the team best, right? PJ can be a big-time winning player for any NBA squad out there. I would be pretty frustrated, Doug. I'd be pretty damn frustrated if they took PJ Washington away from me. Now, the idea would be to let PJ walk because you're uncomfortable giving him whatever the figure comes in, annually, whatever that is. And then you would think Charlotte would turn all their attention to Grant Williams. Now, another question could be if PJ does leave, if you allow him to get out of here, go to any other franchise, I wonder what that does for Kelly Oubre. So now are you talking about bringing Grant Williams in, which we were talking about, does he come in at the full mid-level exception, $12.4 million? If there's more, okay, but maybe it was right at that line. But if that was the case, then maybe you could bring in Kelly Oubre on not much of a salary. So I don't even know if that's possible. But you bring PJ back in cap space, right? The cap hold changes as soon as he gets a new contract. And then maybe you could get Grant Williams on that full mid-level extension. That's what they've been trying to do. You would think if they're interested in Grant. So now I wonder if this opens up the door for another surprise or if Kelly is as good as gone, no matter how you slice it. So this would change the calculus a little bit on what we expected. But I would rather just bring PJ Washington back and then see if you can get Grant Williams. If you can't, fine, and then use the mid-level excuse me. What am I saying? I'm saying extension. Yeah, I'm saying extension. My bad. But yes, maybe you could use the MLE for something else.
I think what we're witnessing here, Walker, is the product of Mitch Kupchak's skill as a drafter in the late lottery. Because he picked up a couple of guys in Miles Bridges and PJ Washington that are not bad enough to really not consider re-signing at all, but good enough, but not good enough to really go hard after and overpay immediately or max out. They're guys that are hard decision kind of players. There are two guys, and Miles Bridges for reasons obviously off the court more than on the court. There are two guys that aren't getting that didn't get a ton of attention in that early free agency period. There weren't immediate offers, and a lot of the cap space has dried up now. I think if Dallas is the location, if that ends up being the location, I don't think they have this cap space to go 20 plus million on PJ Washington. I think this would be some kind of sign and trade situation. Maybe a Christian Wood?
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, the sign and trade options don't look great, but better to get something than nothing, obviously. But the cap space is dried up. These guys weren't, first options, which I tried to prepare people for. I said, look, if PJ goes or Miles goes, it's going to be a second or third option kind of thing. The people are not going to be busting down the doors to go and throw a huge offer and try to make the Hornets match. That wasn't going to be the problem. The problem was going to be negotiating with Miles and PJ after their markets dried up. and saying, look, guys, you didn't get any offers. So here we are, and, sign this sheet, let's go. And so far, both PJ and Miles have been resistant to doing that.
Yeah. And so if it was a sign and trade situation, you'd have Christian Wood, who would also have to sign a contract, by the way, because he was on an expiring this past season. So you'd have to sign and you'd have to bring in Christian Wood for whatever figure that is. You have Davis Bertans, who's making $17 million, the third year on his 3-year deal.
Because I think Bertans went to OKC. I think that might be old if you're looking at Basketball Reference. Bertans, I think, went to OKC in that Kason Wallace deal.
Oh, that's right, with them trading up to 10 or something like that. Yep. Okay, so Bertans isn't even a contract that you would bring back anyway, because that would have been around the figure that you're talking about with PJ making $17 million.
Don't you worry, folks. Bertans is going to torture the Hornets for the rest of his life. Right. He's just going to be doing it from Oklahoma City.
That's right. So I guess Tim Hardaway, that's another name to look out for. Yeah.
You're not throwing any names that I love right now. Christian Wood. Well, Christian Wood is interesting. Okay. I'm not saying I love it, but I will say the one thing the Hornets don't have at this point, other than defense at the guard, playmaking, all NBA level scoring. Other than that, the Hornets don't have a center that can shoot. They've got Mark Williams, a center that can play defense really well, pass better than people think he can, and decently operate in the pick and roll, but he can't shoot yet. Nick Richards, I think he can secretly shoot, but he's keeping it under a bushel. But we haven't seen it be prolific. So if you bring in Christian Wood, you do bring in a guy that would, off the bench, he's not starting, but off the bench would complement a skill that none of the other centers have.
All right, and here's my last thing on PJ. I'm going to have a bunch, right? This is already making me mad.
You don't even want to touch that Christian Wood conversation. Facial, for the listeners, you got to go to YouTube and see Walker's face as I was trying to sell him on Christian Wood. It really just encapsulates, I think, what a lot of people are feeling about free agency right now.
Yeah, I mean, what are the Hornets doing, right? If this thing got to $22 million annually, okay, it's a lot of money. You wanted to move on, fine. I mean, I wouldn't like to see PJ walk, but yeah, that's a lot of money. I would totally get it and be more accepting of it. But if this thing still comes in under $20 million annually, you know what also you're doing when you get rid of PJ? You're getting rid of a perfect fit next to Mark Williams. You're getting rid of a guy that helps extend the floor for LaMelo. So somebody that already doesn't finish well at the rim right now, he can get as much space as possible to operate with if PJ is out there at the power forward. So the two guys that you have invested your future in, LaMelo Ball and Mark Williams, both benefit perfectly from PJ's presence on the floor with them. And then you're going to let that guy go to Dallas for Christian Wood or whoever. Like, Doug, it's not even just about PJ being a good player. It's about being a perfect fit for your foundation going forward and letting that guy walk out the door. It'd be so frustrating.
I get it, but we don't know the number. We may never know the number. But if the number is super high and you can get discount PJ Washington, you can get big lots PJ Washington, which is Grant Williams.
Is that Grant? Yeah.
You're right. It's big lots PJ Washington. If you can get that,
you're right about
that. Here's why I'm fine with it, because I don't want this iteration of the franchise, the way it's currently constructed, I don't want them overpaying at this point. I would rather the books be cleaner for a front office, a controlling interest that is willing to be more aggressive. Because if you were telling me, look, actually MJ's not selling the team and Mitch Kupchak's not going anywhere, then I would say, you know what, overpay for PJ Washington, absolutely. Why? Because this front office has not shown an ability to get into the trade market to improve this team. They have not shown a willingness or an ability, really, to operate in free agency with any kind of aggressiveness or competency. Mm-hmm. And so this is how you win. This is the only way you win. Maybe you don't win a playoff series, but this is the only way you win regular season games. So I would say go for it. Give him whatever he wants. But if there's going to be, new people that with new decision-making power, then I say the cleaner the books, the better. And if that means the regular season that's a little bit more disappointing next season, so be it.
Yeah, you do have the task of appeasing LaMelo. You can't mess around too much.
Well, that's 5 years.
Yeah.
We got some time now. The Hornets bought themselves some time.
Yeah,
It cost a lot of money. It cost a lot of money, but they bought themselves some time.
They did. All right. One more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Yeah, I hear you, Doug. We got one more segment. We'll talk a little bit more about Summer League. What were some of the other observations we had outside of Brandon Miller, the other rookies suiting up for this squad? We'll talk about that coming up next. Locked On Hornets.
Is Locked On Hornets.
Mitch Kupchak, will he do the thing that he has not done in season this entire
Anything.
time?
The thing that he has not done
It
is
always
anything.
comes back to do something.
Just do one thing.
You need to get a stick from outside and become the meme in person, because it always comes back to do something.
Do something.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Doug, my question to you, has Mitch this offseason, has he technically done anything yet if Miles signed the qualifying offer, which had already been extended before this offseason and free agency officially started? Like, has he technically done one single thing yet?
No, you just answered the question. He didn't do anything. Miles signed a qualifying offer that was given to him. I mean, I guess if you want to be super generous, you could say that just extending the qualifying offers is doing something, but that's not signing a player.
True.
That's just starting the process to retain a player. That's not technically going out and getting someone. So, no, I'm not even counting Miles Bridges, who basically just said, fine, I'll be a Charlotte Hornet.
That is kind of what happened. All right, well, what other guys did something in the Summer League game, Doug? If we were to go check out Every Hornets box score and see a rundown of what you thought on game one of Summer League, Nick Smith Jr., a lot of anticipation there. Amari Bailey had a couple of nice moments. What were some of your other takeaways?
Nick Smith Jr. had a game similar to Brandon Miller, where it started off pretty nightmarish. He looked sped up. He was playing a little bit too fast. Speed is definitely going to be one of his strengths. But he looked a lot like James Bouknight looked early on. You know, a little bit too sped up, not really understanding where he was going next, kind of thing. Turned the ball over a little bit. The defense, I think, is going to need lots of work. But he looks bigger than I thought he would. Like, he's got some size. I'm not going to play like Muscle Watch yet. Also, just real quick side note while I'm thinking of Muscle Watch, we got to quit with this Bryce McGowan stuff. I looked at Bryce McGowan's in this game. He looks the same. Like, I mean, maybe a little, I'm sure he got a little bit bigger, but the guy did not bulk up. Like, he looks very similar to Amari Bailey. Like, they doing the Spider-Man meme out there, both in their game and their build. So Nick Smith Jr., 12 points, 5 of 14 shooting. You know, inefficient shooting was something that I think hurt his draft stock just as much. Decision-making, you know, and which leads to inefficient shooting. When your shot selection is bad, it leads to inefficient shooting. You know, I think that hurt his draft stock just as much as the injuries did. So 5 of 14 shooting, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, 4 turnovers. Looking for him to improve as well, but not super worried. Amari Bailey, the other rookie that played, I thought good poise on defense. You know, took a back seat on a lot of possessions. Didn't see a lot of him featuring. He did have that great play where he got into the passing lane, stole it, broke out into transition, and dunked it hard. You know, that's his explosiveness is going to be in transition, right? He's going to have trouble in the half court, you know, showing off that same kind of explosiveness. I didn't see him attempt a 3, and he missed 5 free throws. That's a little bit troubling.
Yeah, 2 of 7.
Yeah, if you're talking about Amari Bailey, like having a role early, that's probably something that you don't want to see. So those are my takes on the rookies. James Najee, DNP, how do you feel about that? 0 minutes.
I'd like to see him. Yeah, I want to see James Najee. Hopefully we get to see him at some point. Maybe that's just coming over late in the process.
No.
Here.
You got to go harder than that, man. You're the James Najee apologist. You are the #1 James Najee fan clubber. You are the president. You're the president.
This is the problem because I want to talk about how good I think he is defensively. And now I'm the apologist. I just want to see him.
You know, well, you have to go. Marlon Garnett, what are you doing? This is disgusting. This team got blown out. The interior defense was garbage. Kai Jones is not a center, cannot play center. You play him instead of James Najee. You got to go harder. You are president of the fan club. So,
yeah, I'll be president. That's fine. I'll take on the James Najee stock. I'll buy all the stock that you're giving me. Yeah, if we're going to talk about some of the older guys on the team.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Kai Jones, James Bouknight didn't look great for either one of them. Now,
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, I didn't think for Bouknight. I don't know, man. I mean, Bouknight was 1 of 4 from 3-point range.
Yeah.
Kai Jones didn't have, well, he had 2 points. He was 0 of 3 from the field. Bouknight for me, I think when you looked at him, he was settling for 3-pointers again. Marlon Garnett had a comment after the game where he thought that the team wasn't moving the basketball nearly enough. He actually liked the energy. He
bring
thought,
a point guard. Start a point guard.
Well, the execution is what he pointed to as well. But I kind of looked at James Bouknight with some of those possessions where they weren't moving the ball, certainly earlier in this game. Kai he had the awesome block. That was fun. He swatted the hell out of that. But offensively, it just wasn't working. And I'll tell you, just the eye test for me, Doug, Bryce McGowan's was 3 of 10, 18 minutes he played. I still thought he looked like the best player on the Hornets yesterday. I don't know if you got that same feeling. No, it wasn't the greatest shooting percentage, but he looked by far the most comfortable. He and Justin Robinson, I don't hate Justin Robinson. Like, I think he's fine. We'll see what he does in game 2. He only played 11 minutes. But with Bryce McGowan's, I thought he was the best player. Did you get those same vibes, or did you look elsewhere?
I had my eyes elsewhere because I'm comfortable enough with Bryce McGowan's at this point. I'm glad that he's playing. Any summer minutes are going to be good for a young player, but I'm comfortable with where Bryce McGowan's is. I think he's going to have a place within this rotation at some point this season. It might not be game 1 because they're pretty. Depending on if they do anything in free agency, they might be a little stacked at the wing, but. I'm comfortable with Bryce McGowan's. But going back to Bouknight and Kai Jones, at least Bouknight didn't look any worse than he did last season. In fact, I would argue that he looked a little bit better than he did in spots last season because I thought I thought he played with poise. I thought he played with control. The turnovers early in that game were other guys playing hero ball and not having a point guard out there. But yeah, 1 of 4 from 3. That's not great. Bad fouls. That to me was the most worrying thing from Bouknight is he's still getting his hands where he shouldn't have his hands. Like, that's the thing. You got to stay on the floor and doing that kind of thing in limited minutes that he's going to see in the regular season, if any minutes at all. You can't be going out there and doing bad fouls. That's just going to get you sent to the bench pretty quickly. But Kai Jones, Walker, this might be the end, man. This might be the end of Kai Jones because or at least in Charlotte, he might have to go somewhere else and be successful. Because he looked worse than he did at the end of last season. 0 made field goals, 0 rebounds in 21. How do you have 0 rebounds in a summer league game? I'll tell you how. San Antonio made a ton of shots, and part of that was Kai Jones's fault because Barlow went 10 of 13 from the field, and that was Kai Jones's assignment. A lot of that was over Kai from like 15 feet. Like he can't defend the rim. He will have one amazing highlight block per game that we all go, oh my God. Yeah. But he can't defend the rim. 5 fouls, 0 rebounds in 21 minutes. Bad decisions with the ball in his hands. Walker, this was enraging me. How many times during that game did you see a guard try to go over the top to Kai Jones and he either fumbled the basketball or he was too deep with his positioning, like just bad positioning on the pick and roll. It was... look, Brandon Miller had some struggles early in that game. He did not have a nightmare game. Bouknight, 1 of 4 from 3, that was not a nightmare game. Kai Jones, that was a nightmare game.
Yeah, it was really bad. And the fact that that's a third-year guy, it's troubling for sure, especially when you trade up to get that first-round selection. And the thing you gave up, by the way, again, I keep mentioning that, but the thing you gave up was a pick that you couldn't use to go out and better your team elsewhere because you didn't have control over it. And this is the thing that shows up. It's Kai Jones that just hasn't put it together. Hopefully he can bounce back and then maybe balance the scales in the second game, but it was a pretty bad debut in Summer League for a lot of Charlotte Hornets and Kai Jones, no doubt about it. All right, any finishing thoughts here before we end today's episode?
Well, yeah, I do. The Hornets did have a camp, right? Like, we haven't really talked about the overall loss, but they got shellacked by San Antonio. It doesn't last long, just like everybody else. That's for sure. I know it was early. The Hornets aren't used to doing early, but they did have a camp, right? They didn't go camping instead. They went to camp, right? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, honestly, I hope they make some adjustments because, this does not look good on the team there that is preparing these guys to get after it. I want to see, obviously wins don't really matter in summer league, but you don't want it to be a disaster. You want to see guys, playing organized basketball. That's only going to help these players, shine and do things that they normally would do if they're not being asked to do things that they normally shouldn't be asked to do. And also these summer league games, the arenas get a little empty, for some of these games, especially no Wemby for this game. So,
Yep.
Sacramento showed up for the Sacramento game, but they didn't necessarily show up for this Hornets Spurs affair. And there was a lot of cursing, and the cursing gets bleeped out. And I think a lot of people thought their YouTube TV or Hulu subscription was broken, but it was just the broadcast bleeping out passion. And it was the bleeps were so long because, they get all these feeds on a delay. And then when the guys in the truck hear something, they have to bleep out. So I don't know. Maybe we need to just, it was a little like, it's like
NC-17.
disorienting to hear all the bleeps, but such as summer league. Summer league for everybody.
So we'll see if the NBA fixes that. The schedule, it's basically the Hornets are playing every other day, right? So they have a game tomorrow against Golden State, July 7th against the Spurs, the 9th against the Lakers, 11th against Portland, 13th against the Pelicans. So every other day, the Hornets will be suiting up in summer league. Their next game again happening July 5th. That's tomorrow against Golden State. Happy 4th of July to you. Thanks for listening to us on your holiday. We greatly appreciate it. And making us your first listen, make your second listen. Game to Game NBA, every result, every top performance. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Have a great holiday. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
You're going to have to bleep me out if I see another one of those performances.
DJ.